Hi guys, we just shot a class on Beaducation Live over on Facebook, and we showed you how to make rings from round wire.
So we're gonna take the round wire and we're gonna flatten it, hammer the heck out of it on a bench block. That was good. And then we're gonna texture it, possibly anneal it if needed. I mean, we do anneal it, you may not have to. And then we shape it on the ring mandrel, this guy right here that I'm pointing at you. Look at that, look at that, awesome. So like Mel said, this was shot over on Facebook as a live video, and we've edited it here. So you'll see us like talking to our customers, we're asking questions and stuff. So if that's a little weird, just ignore it, as always. And we're glad you're here. Let's go make some rings.
Let's check it out.
All right, so don't let this freak you out. I like tools. You may have 2 or 3 of these tools. You may have all these tools. Likely you have more of these tools. And I'm going to show you what's necessary for what we're doing today. What is extra? What's a bonus? You know, that sort of thing. So let me start by zooming in so I can show you the ring that we're going to be doing. All right, let's take this off. So here is a wraparound ring that started as round wire, and I flattened with my hammer, a chasing hammer, which looks like this, against the bench block. Flattened it and then stamped it for some fun texture and put my daughter's initials on it. So when I wear it, it looks like that.
Super cute.
Now as far as how much it wraps around, that's up to you. This other one that I made, which we're going to make today, wraps around so much that depending on how you wear it, it looks like it's 2 rings.
I love that.
They could be closer together if you like that look. You could spread them apart if you like that look. So what I'm not going to be giving you today is exact recipes, except for this ring, because there's so many factors involved. So I know that this wire started as a 10 gauge and it started at 3 inches. And feel free to write that down. Now this ring is a size 7.5 inch, not inch-ish, 7.5 inch, that's really big. So it's about, see how it's sitting here, I don't know if you can see on the camera, between the 7 and 8, so it's about 7.5-ish. But if I were to stretch it way out and have these, you know, not so overlapped, it could be bigger. They could overlap more, it could be smaller. So with every ring, there's so much adjustments that you can make, especially the wraparound. Now, if you're trying to get them to just come together perfectly in the back, like just an open back ring or solder it, that's a whole different thing. You have to be very, very exact with measurements. But today we're doing this wraparound ring. So you can start with a fairly large length and then kind of decide where you want to go with it. But what I want to encourage you to do is every time you make one of these, or really anything where you're cutting and figuring and you don't have an exact recipe, is write down all the steps as you go. So for me, I will write down, this is 3 inches. After I flatten it, it's going to be longer. I'd measure that and write that down too. After I shape it, I'd write that down too, so I can go like, oh yeah, I remember yesterday I made this with 3 inches. It overlapped, you know, to a nice amount, and it came out to a size 7.5. But I'd like it to be more like this, so this time I'm going to cut it at 2.5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what's hard is to be here. In fact, this ring right here, I was like, oh man, I didn't measure that first, and I don't remember what this was, but I love the overlap. So had I written it down, that would have been a lot better. I'll probably straighten it out here on camera just so we can remeasure it, but you don't want to be doing that because you're totally going to mess up your ring. But I'm disappointed that I didn't measure it first. Maybe I did, and I probably wrote it on some post-it and then threw it away. Okay, makes sense. Any questions so far?
I just want to know if you can do that with the copper wire as well.
Yeah, you can do this with any metal. I mean, let's not go crazy though. Working with like a really, really hard like stainless steel metal is going to be rough. But any of the metals that we sell, absolutely. Sterling, fine silver, copper. We have silver filled, but it's a little bit weird when you really, really mess with it because the core is a different color. Gold filled, I've done it before. That's not what this is. We're going to talk about this in a second, but gold filled wire, it totally works because the core of gold filled is brass. So if in any weird filing happens and you expose that, it doesn't look weird. I mean, it's not great, but just, you know, so you know what you're working with. All right. So I've got here all the tools I'm going to be using. I'm going to announce them and discuss them as I use them. I think that's going to be easier. So let's just start out with the fun part. So this is cool. This is my fine silver 10 gauge. I know it's 10 gauge. Well, maybe I don't know. It's 12 gauge. Let's back this whole thing up, rewind, re-edit this video. I'm working with 12 gauge. You can work with 10 gauge. You can work with 14 gauge, any of the thick gauges. This one's 12. I thought I grabbed 10. Okay, so this one's 12 gauge. It is, let's just do this all together, 3 and a little bit more than a half. I'm going to actually trim it so I know exactly what I'm working with. I'm just going to use these Fat Daddy cutters and cut a little bit off. So we're starting with 3.5. And I cut this one a little bit longer than I did with this one because I was curious to see how much more it would wrap around. Now with my 3.5 inch round wire, I'm going to flatten it with my chasing hammer. This is a Frets chasing hammer. We also carry a cheaper version. But what you want to look for is a nice flat face that's a little bit convex, not super round. Otherwise your striking area is really small. And not super, super flat, because then when you catch with the edge, it marks it up. So I'm going to go ahead and just hammer the heck out of this.
Do it.
I will tell you that when I grabbed this out of the bin, I was not positive if it was sterling or fine silver, because I got it out of one of our scrap bins. The way I figured that out, and again, this is why we're going so long today, because I'm going to give you as much information as I can, is I put it on my charcoal block and I hit it with the torch. And I hit it good and hard, and this metal did not change color at all. Had it turned black and fire scaled, I would have known it's sterling. But because it was totally fine and looked exactly like this after I quenched it, I knew it was fine silver. So because of that, I also annealed it. So this is super, super soft, like
Whoa.
butter soft, right?
Yeah.
So I will have a really easy time flattening it. But I just kind of messed with it, so it's a little wonky now. If I flatten it while it's like this, those curves are going to show up. So first, I'm going to straighten it. So this is not flattening the metal. I'm just doing this because I just bent it to show you guys that. I kind of tweaked it. But I'm tapping it with the plastic mallet and turning it at the same time, and see how now it's perfectly flat. All right,
Do you have
or
to,
straight, I should say.
does the wire have to be round to begin with, and can you start with half hard?
Half hard, you're going to be fighting it. You're going to have to anneal it sooner than you would with dead soft, because what's going to happen is once you start hammering it, it won't flatten anymore. It's so hard it won't move. You'll have to stop, anneal it, come back and hammer it. So if that's all you have, sure, but definitely don't buy half hard for this project. You want dead soft. And yes, you can do it from other shape wires, and we're going to talk about at the end working with flat and rectangle wire, but for today we're using the round. So, any other questions, Laura, before I make some noise?
It's all good.
Let's make some noise. All right, this is going to get a little loud, but it's really fun because you can really go for it. So I'm going to just da-da-da-da-da all along here, but I'm not going to be gentle whatsoever. And I'm trying to be even where, you know, sort of continuing my strike while slowly moving, so I'm not just all over the place, because I want this to flatten as even as possible. So now it's flat. You are going to get that hammered look texture. You can definitely stop here and do the next steps of, you know, texturing, stamping, whatever you want before you form it, but I'm going to flatten it a little bit more. If you get lumps and bumps like right here, that's just because right there you put more force on it and it flattened more. It's not bothering me for this ring. Cool.
Looks good.
So now it looks to be like, I don't know, 3 millimeters wide, would you say? This part right here is more narrow, so I'm just going to do a little more there. Awesome. So you do have that little hammered texture. I mean, you could leave it there and shape it into a ring and it would be really pretty, but let's see how much it grew by hammering it flat. We started with 3.5 inches, now we're at 4.
Wow.
So that's something that you need to know. Now that is not going to be the same for every single gauge or every single person, because you may have hammered it more, in which case it would have grown more. You may hammer it less, in which case it's not going to grow as much. If you worked with a thicker wire, like 10 gauge, it's probably gonna grow more. So you can see how there's so many variables here that I would always write it down. Like if this finished ring ends up having a lotus stamp all over it, I might make a note, lotus ring, started at 3.5 inches, 12 gauge, after hammered, 4 inches, blah, 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 you know, so that you know how to, really you're doing this so you can replicate it if you love it.
That makes sense.
Because that would suck, right? All right, you guys still with me? Okay, so now we have this. If I wanted just a cool hammered texture on it, I could come through and texture it with the back of this, move on to the shaping thing. But I think what I'm gonna do is make another diamond one, like the one that I made there. I'm gonna make it a little bit different. So I have my diamond stamp. And I'm just gonna line it up. Actually, it's a little bit not flat. See how much harder it is now? This is okay for stamping, but if I was using like a really, or I want really deep impressions or a really detailed stamp, I'd go ahead and anneal it, come back and do the stamping step. But I think I'm good for now. So I'm gonna do this diamond like this way, then that way, then this way, then that way, and see just
Kind of create geometric
it's gonna be a
shapes.
little different from the one I just did. And I'm gonna do it kind of quick because I'm live, so it may not be perfect, but that's okay. I'm gonna also take my bangles off because they're making a lot of noise. Here you go.
Oh, I'll take those.
Okay, this is kind of interesting. I don't know that it's the coolest texture, but
Oh, I like it.
I am a stamper that typically is fine left to right. It's front to back that sometimes I'm light on the top or light on the bottom. So when you see me hitting twice, I'm hitting here and here. Not that drastic, but that is just personally how I stamp.
I thought you were just going to the heartbeat.
That too. And you see how it's taking the impression just fine. I told you this was going to be a long one, but how fun to see the process like start to finish, right?
Yes.
Because we usually just describe, okay, right there I did a bad stamp. Bad stamp!
She
So I'm
did
going to
a
line it
bad
back up. There we go. And I stamped it even worse, but we're going to pretend like that didn't happen.
That was just a raw diamond, an organic diamond.
A diamond in the rough.
Right.
Okay, so now I have it all stamped. You
Right,
can't
like
really
a
see it there,
diamond.
but once I put black in it, polish it, you'll be able to see it. I will tell you though, since we're learning, when I made this one, I started with a tree stamp, and I wanted, because it had really cool branches, so I stamped it like 5 times and hated it. So that's why this ring is so much wider than this one. I laid it back down and beat the heck out of it with the chasing hammer, and it was like an eraser.
Oh, wow.
It made the
That's
metal
great.
wider because I was flattening it even more, but I had enough thickness that it didn't make it weak, and it totally erased it. Like you can't see it at all. So that's kind of a fun trick. I'm just gonna do one more. I see I have a little space here. Okay, any questions so far, my friends out there? Anybody
Yes.
watching? Just kidding.
Well, Diane had a comment that when she flattened her wire, it was brass and it was a lot harder to do. So
Oh, yeah.
just a reminder about annealing.
Yeah, brass is naturally harder than any of these metals. It's a beast. So thanks, Diane. That's a great reminder.
We also have a question about the your thumb ring and the little dots.
Okay, I'm gonna take this ring off because everybody asks every week. I did not make it. A really awesome artist made it, and my husband bought it for me. It was, I don't know, carved, cast, I'm not sure. I wish I made it, but I didn't. Okay, so now we've got this guy. I am going to, let's see, I'm gonna shape the ends, and then I'm gonna add the dark. So first, you can see the ends are kind of weird from hammering it. Let's see how close I can get for you guys. It's not wanting to focus. It's pretty bright. There we go. Okay. Now it needs to refocus there. It's very slow. There we go. What I'm going to do is, depending on what wire you are working with, if it's really thick, I would cut it with my Fat Daddies. But I've got my shears here, my Xuron shears, and we have a link up there in the tools that I've used. will be in the comments. And I love these shears because it'll cut this just fine, and I can cut like that. With the Fat Daddies, I would have like cut flat and then corner, and then filed. But with these guys, I put it towards the back of the cutter, not way up here, because that's the strongest part. And I'm just gonna sort of trim that off. That wasn't great, but you can see the idea. It's far from great. It was not awesome. And then this one, oops, I squeezed too hard.
Now, on those edges, do you sometimes want that part to even be larger? Like if that's going to be a focal point like you did with your initial ring?
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for asking that. And that's why I have this little piece of scrap here. So let's pretend, let's pause this, pause, putting that aside. Let's pretend you did flatten this all the way. This is just a scrap piece. Like la la la, it's flattened, great. But you did want the end to be what we call paddled out. You're gonna keep your hammer really, really concentrated on that part. See that?
I love it.
It's tough to get a perfect hammer. I mean, you have to make sure that you are like right on top of it or working this way and a little bit that way, because you can see if I just, I got it a little bit wider on that side and on this side. But you come in with your shears and your file and just clean it up. Okay, I'm just going to take these really wide parts off, and then with my file,
I think that's such a pretty look, even if you ended up keeping the center kind of round and you just paddled the edges and made it into a ring. That's really pretty too, with just stamps on the paddled part.
you're right, that is really pretty.
With two little hearts.
Two little hearts, so you can see how much better that shape looks.
That looks nice.
I mean, you're right. Like if we, let's pretend this is a big one. You could leave it flattened like that or round, but I would even come in and
yeah, I like that.
give it like, and see how I'm being deliberate on my spacing. I'm not all over the place, but moving slowly across. That's just such a nice reflective when you get that hammered
That's
look.
pretty, yeah.
So that alone wrapped around.
Lisa, what would happen when you're doing that paddle and it kind of paddles off to one side, a little crooked? I saw you do the shears, but could you also just put it on its side and tap it? What would happen to, reposition it?
Oh, you
yeah.
mean like this? Well, what's going to happen there is if you put it like this, you're going to re-distort the whole thing. It's almost like you're trying to make it thick again.
And what about straightening the regular part of the wire?
Yes, I do that. Do you mean like if this got really wonky and I would put it on there and tap a little bit? Is that what you mean?
I think so.
If you really need to move it, I would use that. Sometimes you're able to do it. This is safer to use a plastic mallet to try to get it flat again. I'm glad you asked that because I did have to do that on my other ring. This one came out pretty flat on its own, but if you had to, tip it on its side. And if you have if this part's curved, have the curve be up so you're flattening down the curve. It's harder to get the two ends this way to flatten down. Put the curved part up and then press that down.
Oh, that's good to know.
Cool?
And will you remind everyone what annealing is?
Yeah.
We have a class.
We're going to do it. Yeah, we're going to put a link up there for annealing, and we're going to actually show annealing right now. Okay. So I had just trimmed this, and I didn't do a great trim job, so I'm going to file it. I have two files here. This is I think it's like our student economy file set. It's pretty inexpensive and it's really harsh. It gets the job done if you need to remove a lot of metal. This one's a lot more expensive. It's a half round wire or file, but it's got kind of it's kind of a hard grit, but to me it's almost medium where it gets the job done but doesn't leave as many file marks as that one that I was just working with. So I'm always pushing away from myself. The file works best if the metal goes down this direction, so either pull it down or move it this way. And you can see my movement, how I'm telling it to be a curved shape by just moving my file that way on both sides. And this is just whatever shape you want on the end. If you want it more flat, then cut it more flat. I've got that guy rounded, I'll do the same here. So annealing, this ring, I'm holding it and feeling it. I think it's soft enough that I can shape it well into a nice round ring. So I may skip the annealing step, but let's do it. Now, whoops. Annealing you could have done before or after. You definitely don't want to darken the impressions now because annealing is going to pull it right out. And what I mean by before or after is before or after doing these ends. That's debatable. You could anneal, then file the ends. But what's happening here, and I want you to keep in mind all the steps and how it's affecting the metal, is by cutting it and filing it right there, I am actually hardening the metal. So maybe get all your hardening out of the way, flattening, stamping, filing, and then let's go ahead and anneal it. So let's do it. Who's with me?
We're removing this guy.
Yeah.
We're with you, Lisa.
Yeah, yeah. Safety goggles, check. And
Here's the David Copperfield part. Magic.
so this is fine silver wire. I anneal enough that I know exactly the right temperature, or the, not temperature, I can't tell you, I'm not a thermometer, but I know exactly what to look for to make sure it is annealed. There's another trick that people use, a Sharpie, and when the Sharpie kind of disappears, it's annealed. I don't know about that. I mean, it works, but really all metal anneals at a different temperature, where I'm sure Sharpie melts away at the same temperature. So I just want you to keep that in mind. It's a general trick that works really well for everything. So if you want to use that, go for it. All right, my pretty ponytail is pulled behind me. My safety goggles are on. I've got my quench bowl here. You can't see it, but it's right. It's just a long Pyrex dish. Usually I use a quench cup, but this is a long piece and I'm going to want to quench it all at once. Okay. So I'm using the power, what's it called? All of a sudden, what is this?
Which torch are we using?
Max Flame?
Max Flame.
Thank God for Laura.
The Max Flame torch. I'm like, power, Fat Daddy, what's going on here? I'm going to pull, wait, let me reset it. Pull this down, that's the child safety. Push this in and pull this back. Light Mel on fire, just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to keep this tip of this blue flame. That's the hottest part, so that's the part, I don't want to use the hardest part for this, hottest part. Gosh, I can't talk. The hottest part of the flame, I want it like a couple inches away because I don't want to melt this. And I'm just coming in and hitting the piece. You'll see it get like a dull orange and the Sharpie's starting to disappear. Now don't get crazy here because you can melt it. Now this is a big piece, so you have to keep the whole thing even, which is like I'm coming round and around, and I would call that done right there. The lights are really bright, so you can't see the dull orange.
Oh yeah, that looks so much better when you do that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to use my cross-locking tweezers and carefully pick it up.
So one more time, have to anneal?
You will know. Because if I go, hang on, I'm going to quench this real quick. If I go to shape this, and I'm having a really hard time shaping it into a ring, which is a very, small loop comparatively. I mean, comparing to like something really big or the size of this, we need to get a really clear shape. If it is not, can you bring that back, Mel? If it's not shaping and moving nicely and you're fighting it, then you're going to have to anneal. Likely with fine silver, I did not have to anneal this. I could tell that it was soft enough to shape it, but you'll be able to tell. Now look at this. It's just like
Butter.
Like crazy. And that's because it's fine silver. Sterling, after you anneal it, is not that much buttery. But this will make it very, very easy for me to shape it into a ring. I'm drying it with my sweater. That is a trick that
Better than my sweater.
if you use it, I want credit for that. Okay, I know. I told Mel before we went on, I was like, I'm going to forget something, so just be prepared in the middle of the show for me to send you to get it.
Pro
And I was
polish
going to
pad.
say, wait, I was going to say pro polish pad, but here it is. It was hiding. So far, so good. Okay, at this point, you could shape it and then oxidize. This is moxidizing because we're not really oxidizing. We're putting ink into these impressions. Now, sterling or fine silver, I would use liver of sulfur. That is the thing that's going to last the most, or a hydrochloric acid base, because you're actually changing the surface of the metal. This is just an ink, but for the sake of quick and easy, because we're live, I'm going to use this and just get it in there. I do this before shaping again, debatable because my hands are going to be all over it with shaping and could pull some out, but that would be my sign that I used the wrong thing to put black in, right? Like you need it to stay there. But I will say it's a lot easier to polish the black off the top, leaving it in the grooves when it's flat. So that's why I do it now rather than after. So this guy, I actually put the black after it was shaped, and it was a pain to polish, and actually distorted it a little bit and had to put it back on.
Oh, or I guess you could polish it on the mandrel.
Yeah, that would have been really brilliant. Thank
Hey
you.
Lisa,
Mel.
you mentioned fine silver versus sterling silver. Could you just do a quickie on what's the difference?
Yeah, so fine silver is a pure metal. Well, I think it's like point little tiny bit not pure, but it's all silver. And sterling is an alloy, and it's got a little bit of a base metal in it, typically copper, which is why it oxidizes. And so the difference is like fine silver, because it's pure, you can fuse it to itself. Sterling is a little bit harder. Fine silver is a little more expensive, but not like crazy more expensive. So because of those different, makeups of the metal, it makes it fine silver is really soft because it's pure silver. And then the alloy is a little bit harder. I hope that helps. All right, so I start with a couple initial swipe offs, and I'm just giving it a nice hug. Now by doing this, I'm hardening it. Anytime you are messing with your metal, doing this hardens it. Putting it in a tumbler hardens it because it's getting affected by something, whether it's shot or a hammer or even this. Or when I cut it, it sends a little shock wave through that hardens it a teeny bit. Any other questions that come up, Laura, while I'm doing this?
I think we're covered, actually.
All right, so you can see there, we're good. It's still very, very soft, which is awesome because I want to shape it into a ring.
Lovely.
Lovely. Let's see if I can come in. Whoa.
Oh my.
I didn't even mean to do that fast, but that totally
That was
worked.
kind of amazing.
All right, so here we are. It's interesting. It's got a little bit of texture behind it.
I kind of love that.
Here's the ends that I filed nice and round. Now what I will say too, before moving forward, I skipped this step. I would take sandpaper, buffing pad, something to clean up. Let me just pull back out the edges even more, because right now it's got those harsh file marks on it. So this is not a file, it's sandpaper. That's why I can go back and forth. And I'm using a medium. This is pretty light grit sandpaper. It's the one.
And those guys are sanding sticks, but you could use sandpaper or a sanding
Yeah.
stick, right?
These are sanding sticks. I think they're in the link that we've put up. And then you can move through them if you want, but I'm just now going to move to a really light buffing one. And this just gives it a nice shine and really soft because you don't want any scratchy bits. So where I'm going round and round like that, I definitely also want to get that edge right there. That's the part against your finger.
Okay, we have 2 questions.
Two
One,
questions.
we want to clarify for Trudy that fine silver will fuse to itself, which is different than soldering.
Yes.
You don't need solder when you're fusing fine silver. You do need solder if you're soldering sterling silver or
Correct.
other metals.
Good one, Laura.
And then Linda mentioned that she uses acrylic paint instead of Sharpie. And does that do anything? Does that mess up the metal?
Nope, that's just another way of putting black in here, and there's, everybody chime in with the way that you do it, because everybody does a little differently. I've seen paint, I've seen enamel paint, I've seen ink, I've seen nail polish, I've seen, proper oxidizing, like hydrochloric acid-based solutions, like silver black, black max, liver of sulfur. There's a lot of ways to get the black in there and to polish off the top. Now, next week we're going to be talking about sealants, because this will rub off, and what you have to keep in mind is rings are the worst because they get washed the most. They rub against your skin. So this is industrial Sharpie, which actually lasts a really, really long time. I am a fan of this, and I've been using it forever. I recently, just because I was being lazy, used regular Sharpie. It was gone by that night. So also the deeper your impressions, the more it will stay in there because, your finger, the soap has to really get in there to pull it out. So there's tons of different ways. If you're worried about it coming off, we're going to talk about sealants next week. How's that for planning ahead, huh, Mel?
Sounds pretty good.
All right, let me come out a little bit more. So now it's time to shape it. Time to shape it. This is so soft that I could just put it on the ring mandrel and bend it with my hand. But let's say yours isn't so soft. Let's do this part together. This is going to be a wraparound ring. So just like last week when we went over this, you come in, well, I like to come in with my large wrapping tabs. I like the middle barrel because it's like a average size ring, and then I can shape it from there to the exact size that I want. And normally if a regular open back or ring I'm going to solder, I want this to be totally straight or perpendicular to the plier, but because it's going to wrap around itself, I'm going to come in an angle. See that? Mm-hmm. And let it, it's like making a coil. Continue that, open my plier, bring it around, continue that angle. See what's happening here? Mm-hmm. Now the more the angle, the more it will be separated here. If you wanted it really, really tight, like come right next to each other, you're going to need less of an angle. And yes, this part is now off of the plier. The color's adjusting really weird. This part up here, but that's not the part I'm working with anymore, so it doesn't matter. It's this part right here that I'm pushing against. Actually, I got so excited I skipped a step. I'm going to back it up. You want to curl both ends first before doing this, because sometimes that last curl is difficult. So I'm just going to leave that guy hanging out, and he will come around when I need him. I'm pushing with my hand here. This is the part where if you need to anneal, you will know. All right, so check that out.
Pretty.
This one was longer than this one, if you remember. So that's why it's wrapped around even more, if you look at it from this angle. Okay, so now let's take a look at it. Everything looks pretty round. Now's the time that I would put it on the ring mandrel, right? So just the shape that I just made came out to about, looks like 5.5. If that's what you're looking for, then leave it there and tap on it with your plastic mallet to harden it up. It will also make sure it's really, really round. Now, back here with my finger, I'm holding it in place, because if you accidentally are tapping and hitting at this angle, you're going to push it down your ring mandrel. It's going to get bigger. So again, right now I'm doing this just to harden it, not to size it. That's if you're happy with that size. I want it bigger personally, so that was just to show you if you're happy with that one. So I'm going to take it and sort of turn it as I bring it down, and it's stretching it. So let's say I want this size, which is about an 8. Sorry, the airplane is really close. Let me pull it off so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to hold it there and harden. Not being gentle whatsoever, because I'm working with, and you want to flip it over because this is really wide. So this guy, see how it's not touching there? That's because it's a wide ring, so we want to give him his chance to be hardened, and I don't want to make a tapered ring. And hammer on the part that's down here. If I hammer, so let me back up so this makes sense. If while I'm hardening this, I hammer here and here, I'm going to make a tapered ring. So I concentrate on the bottom half, flip it over, concentrate on the bottom half to keep it at that size.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So if we look at it from bird's eye view, see how everything lines up. And squeezing it, and it's really, really nice and hard now.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of cool. Again, if you wanted it more like that, then that's what you need to do when you shape it.
Start the wrap like a little bit, not doing it
A little
at such an
closer when you
angle.
coil it. That's exactly right. Okay.
We got a nice shout out from Priscilla on your skills, making everything look easy and doable.
You know what, Priscilla? Give it a try, because I'm guessing that once you give this a go, you're going to have the same experience, and let us know how that goes, because we are interested. We love to see when you guys do stuff with the things that we teach you. We have a Facebook group called Beaducation.com community Metal Stamping and Beyond. So if you're not in that group, do a search here on Facebook and jump in. So over there, we get a lot of feedback. Like a lot of people posted from last week, I did the ring that Mel and Lisa showed. And that's so exciting to us because we're like, oh, they listen.
We love it. Yeah, we do love it.
It's like when your kid, like, it listens to you. It's very exciting. I guess what we're telling these people is more exciting than what we tell our kids.
Well, yeah, because they actually go out and do it, and our kids don't.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so that's that. That's this guy. We're going to talk a little bit more, and feel free to continue to throw out questions.
We do have one.
Give it.
Okay, you are working on a steel ring mandrel. Can you use other material ring mandrels?
Yes, but it won't be as effective. For sizing wise, like if you have a plastic or a wooden one, yes, you can get it to the size and pull it down and all that. And hammering against it will harden it because, you know, you're affecting it, you know. Even if I was hammering this against the table or against the sandbag with the wire between, it's going to do something. But steel mandrel will be even more effective as far as hardening it. And then if you were doing something like you had a finished ring on here and you were stamping, you definitely want this to be steel because you need that hard resistance to get the stamp to push into the metal and this to push back the other direction, if you think about it that way, giving you a nice deep impression. Cool? Mm-hmm. Is that it?
Cool.
There she goes. Look at Laura. She's on fire reading our comments. Okay, so that's this guy, start to finish. And I don't know, this took us 38 minutes, but we were talking a lot. When I made this sample, honestly, it took 5.
Wow.
I bet you, with the learning curve, it will take 10, and your next one will take 7, and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I wanted to show you as well, ooh, and also, like, why not stamp a little secret message in there?
I love that. Yeah, that's cute.
Okay, what I also wanted to show you is doing this from flat wire. So we sell sterling flat wire, thanks, by the foot, and you can always cut it, shape one side, shape it, do everything you want to do from there, right? But these are some other pieces that we sell. This is a, what is that, 4-inch? Well, yeah.
That is a 4-inch.
This is a 4-inch piece. It comes in this size. Do you remember the number on this guy?
That one is SS792.
792, right. So this is 4-inch. I mean, I would only buy this if I was going to make a ring from 4 inches, which would be pretty rad because if this one was 3.5,
yeah, that would
I would
be really
imagine
cool.
This would wrap around
3 times.
3 exact times, which would look really neat. Or you can buy the wire by the foot. Or we have these guys that's pretty cool for those of you looking for a rose gold ring or a gold filled ring. These are 6-inch pieces. This is gold filled. It's WIR 049. Let me get a little zoom action in here. This is WIR 041 and it's sterling. And this is rose gold. It's WIR 051.
Now, presumably with 6 inches, you could cut that in half and do 2 rings.
There you go. So all you'd have to do is cut this guy in half and then file this end, that end. This one's already done for you because it's cut that way.
We just have one more question here. If you're stamping on a ring that's already formed, does that make it bigger?
Yes. So if you're, well, depending how much you stamp, and you will see this. If you have a ring and you put it on here, it's just like when we flattened it, and you stamp on it, if you're stamping a lot, that ring will grow because you're dispersing the metal and you're actually thinning it. So the thinner it gets, the smaller, the bigger the inner circumference gets, if you want to talk math, and then it will grow.
And that depends on, I mean, if you stamp all the way around the ring, you're gonna, it's gonna grow more than
If you
just a
stamp
name.
one little word, it probably will grow a teeny bit. But if you really go for it, or you flatten it and you texture it, it could grow a whole half size. And again, there's no recipe to that because I don't know how hard you're hitting it. I don't know how thick it is that you're starting with. Pewter's very soft, so just hitting it barely will get a good impression and thin the metal, where with sterling you're gonna have to hit harder and da-da-da-da. So I hope from this show, the one thing you learn is how to do your own recipes and how to like problem solve and figure it out so that if you make a ring that you are digging, you can easily replicate it.
Right, by taking notes.
Yeah.
Laura, did we have another question?
Yeah, although it's going to be different each time, and that's why you need to write down those recipes. But just tell the folks what size, how wide that band became, or what size stamp the diamond was, just to kind of give them a sense.
Yeah, okay. So this started as 12 gauge. which is 2.05 millimeters, 0.018 inch, right? Now it is, gosh, I wonder if I can just slide it in there. Some of it came out to about an 8 gauge. This one's a little bit wider. So I'd say that now it's about 3.3 millimeters wide.
And I think that diamond is about 5 millimeters, and that's why she was able to do the top and the bottom.
So where did that stamp go? Here it is. So you could see that I never was able to get the full impression of the diamond because, like I said, this is about 3.3 and this guy's about 5. So that's a good question, Laura. So now they can just get a feel for what they're looking at.
Yeah, if you were doing a 12 gauge wire, it looks like any 3 millimeter or smaller stamp, you'd be able to see the whole stamp. And then a font that's 3 millimeter or 3.2 would fit on there.
Yeah, you could definitely, well, I don't know about 3.2, it's too close.
You
If
think
this
so?
is 3.3 wide,
Yeah, so maybe
that
3
only gives you
millimeter
a
and smaller.
teeny bit of wiggle room. At 3.3, I would use a 2 millimeter. And I think that's all the business we need to cover today.
I think you're right.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Bye, guys. Thanks for checking in.